Hello, this is Galvin here, and I'm going to talk to you about my journey through the Chufti League. So, first of all, what was the Chufti League? The Chufti League was a league that was set up by Chufti. I will put a link to his channel in the description below. And what he did was he brought together a bunch of Pokemon content creators, mostly on the Unite scene, but a bunch of content creators on the Pokemon scene in general. Brought together, well, we see 12 badges here. That'll be 8 gym leaders, 4 Elite Fours, and a handful others along the way as well. But he brought them all together to host the Chufti League. So, each week, each of the challenges was given a challenge to a Elite Four or a gym leader of their choice. And each week, we had to take them down, claim their badge, or, well, we'll take the L and just have to challenge them another time. So, it is a race for each of the challenges to get all 8 gym badges and then challenge off against the Elite Four. I believe, let me look this up, there was 105 challenges in total. And well, I am the one who ended up on top. So, this video, as I said, is going to be my journey through it all. So, the first thing that's good to note is as we signed up, we had to register a roster of 10 Pokemon. And we had to register each a Terra type for each individual one, and each of our challenges must be using that Pokemon and must be using that Terra type. If I switch over to this one, the roster that I chose was these top 6 Pokemon and these 4 in the bottom left corner. These ones were just here for backups for when I need it. I'll talk to them when I talk about them. So, my Pokemons I chose. So, the other important thing, there was a list of restricted Pokemon. These Pokemon you can choose up to 4 Pokemon to have on your roster, but each challenge you make, you can only bring 2 of them. For me, I only registered 2 restricted Pokemon, so I never really had the issue of accidentally going into a battle with multiple restricteds. Look, it happened a couple of times, and people will make mistakes. But we'll talk about, firstly, my 2 restricteds, which were Landorus and Roaring Moon. So, my thoughts when I was first registering Pokemon was I want to pick a roster that worked really well in both singles and double battles. And well, I would say that theory went really well. For me, the biggest one is always going to be Landorus. Lando T. This mod, ever since it came out back in Gen 5, it has probably been the most consistent Pokemon in whatever format it is available in, be it singles or doubles. And I've got a lot of experience in using it in both doubles and singles, because look, I've played Gen 5 singles a lot, and I've used this mod a lot more in the VGC, so I'm very comfortable with using this absolute beast. Next up, we have Roaring Moon. So, honestly, it was such a long time ago now, it's hard for me to really think as to why I chose this in particular, but as the league went on, I'm very happy that I did. It has put in work every single week, every single challenge. It got brought to every single match, and it put in some work every single time. Yeah, it probably dropped. It will go over my team stats in a bit, but it definitely fainted quite a lot for my team. But every time it battled, it was able to take out a lot of Pokemon that just allowed, like, it was effectively my wall breaker most of the time. Just broke through a Pokemon my team just couldn't really handle elsewhere, or soften things up for the rest of my team to sweep off. Nextly, we will talk about King Gambit. So, King Gambit, this one has a bit of a contentious spot because I feel like something that was very valuable going into the Chufti League was whatever mon you had last at the very end to clean up at the very end. As I said, my team, I guess the team style is break through walls, pivot around, and then have a cleanup. And on the other side of things, I had a lot of setup mons as well. But this one is the cleanup. So the reason why I say it's contentious for cleanup is, again, it's a mon to have last in your party, and this gen introduced this one. It introduced last respects, and both of the mons with last respects are also really strong to have in the back for cleanup. But I went with King Gambit. I just felt like its steel typing just made it work really well. Dark typing was really good. I've had a shiny one for my VGC stuff, so I'm like, yeah, I brought it. It probably has the most versatility out of the three. Houndstone kind of locked to really wanting that sand, and Bascule Legion. Bascule Legion I was very much on the fence on, but the main reason why I probably didn't end up with Bascule Legion in the end was because I brought already two really good water types. First one being my Dondozo. So, this Dondozo, alright, this is the Dondozo, one of two Pokemon on my entire roster that I had brought to the EUIC way back in 2022, but at this point. No, it would have been 23 at EUIC that I brought my Dondozo and had a good run in through the EUIC. But yeah, so again, going on the theme of mons that are really good in both singles and doubles, Dondozo, I wasn't the most familiar with it on the single side of things, but man, I am definitely one of the best Dondozo players in Australia, at the very least. I have the highest performance with my EUIC run. The only other contention was Lukiel, I believe it's Ukiel? One of the Lukes in getting a top cut in a regional, but up to you to decide which one is a higher performance. But irregardless, I have used Dondozo so much throughout the VGC scene. I am extremely confident in using it in doubles, and well, that really showed. And yeah, that's all I really need to talk about this boy. Alright, on to the Volcarona. So Volcarona was one of the last few mons that I added to the team, mostly because it was a spot where it was like I really needed either a fire type or a electric type just to help with a lot of my types that I was missing. Volcarona really shot out to me because, again, it's really versatile in both singles and doubles. Singles, yes, it's got really good Quiver Dance setup sets. In doubles, it has access to Rage Powder, has Flame Body to deter a lot of physical attackers. Absolutely brilliant mon. Didn't have the strongest start into the league, but come to the last half, this mon put in a lot of work during a bunch of the Elite Four matches, especially. And then we have my Rillaboom. So this Rillaboom actually is a Rillaboom back from Sword and Shield. This Rillaboom, I hatched it as a shiny Grookey, and it just was sitting around in my Sword and Shield boxes because when it hatched, it had Overgrow, and we couldn't really change it over to Grassy Surge until this gen. So, transferred it up, and it got introduced onto my roster. Again, a mon very versatile in both singles and doubles, really good revenge killer, and something I played around a lot was a bunch of its setup movesets in singles. There was a couple battles where a Sword Stance Rillaboom came on in and put in some work. Absolutely another very consistent mon for my roster. Now on to these four. We have Golden Go. This one it only really showed up during the first 2 weeks, and then after that it didn't really have an appearance, but the first 2 weeks it absolutely was a house, cleaning up the first week, and second week my entire game plan was based around this mon. It's probably one of the newer mons I'm least familiar with, but man, when it came in and hit hard. It, again, is very versatile in doubles because of Make It Rain is huge spread damage, but in singles, where I brought it in the most, having that good as gold ability just to help secure any setup that I put on it. Next, we have the Dragonite. So, for me, Dragonite has been I've most used Dragonite back in Gen 5, back when it first got access to multi-scale, got extreme speed, was really strong back in Gen 5. And this gen, it saw a good resurgence with Xian Power Squads, Terra Normal into E-Speed. It was the last mon I added to my roster. It didn't show up for a lot of the matches, but similar to Golden Go, the matches it showed up in, it put in a lot of work. On those matches it came in, it absolutely was exactly what the team needed. The only rough spot for a lot of the matches was it had to compete a lot with Roaring Moon as a Dragon type attacker for the squad. But again, the times I brought it out, it put in its work. Second to last, we have Glimmora. So this was actually the first Pokemon I added to my roster. I've been extremely fond of this mon all generation. Just something about rock and poison types, I get. Like, I love Nihilego, I love Glimmora. This mon, again, is extremely versatile in both singles and doubles. Singles, setting up hazards. In doubles, it pairs super well with Dondozo, setting up toxic spikes so Dozo can whittle away teams while it stays up on the field. It has such good coverage between Terra Grass into Energy Ball, which showed up a bunch. Earth Power on it came in clutch a bunch of times too. And it just has a lot of versatility on item usage. It's a really good user of Assault Vest. Power Herb Meteor Beam is really great. Focus Sash sets can almost assuredly get up its Toxic Debris setup. Hell, even the first week I brought it in with a red card set, and maybe I didn't play it as best as I could, but it put my opponent on the back foot after turn 1, and from there it got something done. It put in some work all throughout the league. It's the mon with the worst KDA on the team, but hey, half the time it dies as a martyr, weakening mons for the rest of the squad to take out, or setting up pivotal hazards for that bit of extra chip, getting rid of any potential sashes, or again, setting up Dondozo to whittle them away. And lastly on the squad, we have the Tatsugiri. I do have the other two forms here on the standby, but I don't believe I really ever use them. Tatsugiri is the only Pokemon that I brought purely for doubles. And that really shows how much I kind of disrespect Incineroar, I'll be honest. Incineroar's great. I'm a VGC player. It's one of the most consistent VGC mons, but geez, Incineroar, you do not throw hands in singles, honestly. But Tatsugiri, again, it's the only mon that I put on my roster purely for doubles. Outside of that, I did actually end up bringing it to a single battle once, but it never hit the field. But it was very important in that on that battle. I swear, it was very important. But yeah, obvious synergies with Dondozo, and again, I'm extremely comfortable with using Dondozo Tatsugiri strats, and honestly, between the Dondozo half and the Tatsugiri half, I believe my Tatsugiri half is probably the stronger of my two halves in piloting. Like, there's just so much interesting techs and versatility you can actually chuck on this mon. And it's like, alright, it's like your opponent, after they take down the Dondozo, the Tatsugiri comes out, and then I'm like, Phase 2. And the Tatsugiri can just clean up afterwards, and that did show up on a few of the gyms. It cleaned up afterwards with dragon moves, dragon stabs. It, like, versus a couple of them, it had the Hiban Berry to take a dragon hit and then revenge out that dragon. It, like, on the back foot, Tatsugiri, good mon. Good mon. You don't expect it to do much because it's like, alright, the big threat's over. But as I said, this is phase 2. Alright. I will quickly swap on over to my prep sheet. So, this is my preparation Excel spreadsheet. Look, I make an Excel spreadsheet for probably every game I play, and I'm one of the guys who does that. And this sheet is something that is effectively a living document for the entire league. At the very start of the league, I gathered up each of my mons in my roster. You can actually tell in which order I considered adding them to the team. I've also got their kills, their deaths, and their participations. That's participations, the times that they each got brought into the match, not actually hit the field, but was on the team of 6 that I brought in. But yeah, at the start of the league, I made sure to grab each of the mons. I looked up each of their movesets on both singles and doubles, and I listed important items and important moves, and especially coverage moves were very important to grab. Just to have a quick reference for, like, alright, I'm versing this gym this time, I'm thinking about this mon, what moves I can quickly grab. They're all here for quick reference for when I need it. Something you will note is some are highlighted yellow and some are highlighted green. The items, the abilities, the moves that are highlighted yellows are specifically for single battles. Everything greens are specifically for doubles. However, I can grab something from the other if I so wish. But yeah, that's how I pre-prepared for the league. As you can see up here, you will see again the kill, deaths and participations from each of them. The things to note here for the kills, there are only 2 kills that are unaccounted for. That was during my penultimate match versus Luch. It was the only battle that I had that went to timer, and he had 2 Pokemon left over. At that point, like, the rules were, it was ruled in my favor that I was gonna win it. If like either Dondozo picks up the last 2 kills, or if Dondozo gets like, I believe Kowtow Cleave crit into Quaquaval critting it. That was the only case where Dondozo drops from that point. And even at that point, I still had Lando and Golden Go in the back, so either Dondozo picks up the last 2 kills, or Lando and Golden Go pick up one of the last kills at the very end. And the other thing to note is my last match, Roaring Moon picked up a lot of kills, so it went from 13 kills all the way up to 19, definitely getting kill leader. Just absolute house of a mon during that last game. The deaths, as you see, only one mon came out completely unscathed, and he came into a good amount of the battles. The other 2 mons that are also outliers are the Golden Go and Dragonite. As I've said, they had the lowest participation, but the times that they came in, they absolutely were pivotal into those matchups, especially like Golden Go into Lobo and Dragonite into Ramen were their best showings. Alright, so this is my prep document. As you'll see over here, this is where I will take notes, and this is where I will do a majority of my team building. I will often tier off mons as to how important they are going into each match here, and then fill out this as I go as my team builder. This is my team builder. That's funny enough how it goes, and this is where I will take notes as I'm battling. I will mark off anything that I see as I see it, any other notes that I need to check up on, more just quick notes that I need to make as I see them again. Like, again, I noticed my Rill Boom acted before the Rotom Wash, so that way I knew the Rotom Wash was slower than my Rilla. Mind you, it would need a lot of speed investment to outspeed my Rilla, but it's still important to note. And then the only other thing on this front sheet was this. This is just, again, back to the pre-preparation. I went through all of my team builders. I went through both Picolytics and Smogon and grabbed each just good basic EV spreads and labeled them off based on what I needed. And this is something I would quickly grab a referral from, quickly grab a reference whenever I'm doing mock battles or just quickly throwing something together to see how it performs. It's like, alright, this week, bringing my Lando, I'm looking to bring a Scarf set. I've got my option of the Scarf Slight, which is a Scarf set I've used in VGC, mainly to outspeed the base 135, 136 speed mons with the Scarf boost. I have things like the Tankia, Band, like, this is just quick references, and I've labeled them however I felt appropriate. Some of them are very questionable labeled, I'll be honest. But yeah, again, just quick reference for when I need to throw together something for testing purposes for every match. So, another very important sheet was this one. This one was created when the Elite Four came in, because we had no information onto what the Pokemon the Elite Four would bring, except for their ace. This is the leftover from Luch's, where he had fighting types and steel types. So before his battle, like as the week began for me prepping for him, this is the first thing that I would set out. I would look onto Cerebi, I would look onto Picolytics for all the fighting types and all the steel types, for example, that I deemed appropriate for me to prep against. I would list them all here into 3 separate columns for Luch, as you can see, this is all the physical attackers, we've got all the special attackers, and we have all the defensive Pokemon. And that's just how I organize them. All of these numbers are their speed, their base speed, which is important for when I'm determining speed. EV investments into each mon. And from there, this is just very helpful for me to work out EV spreads for each of my mons. So I can refer to all the physical attackers for when I'm defensively EVing, all the special attackers for when I'm specially defensively EVing, walls for when I really need to break through a wall. I'm going to use this column quite a lot. And yeah, this is just something that I brought together just for each of the Elite Four. And just more to cover up for all my bases and prep as hard as I can for them. Nextly, this sheet is to help me get my mons in games. I've used this sheet since the start of this gen. This is a sheet that I've designed, and it gets references from my team builder. It grabs references from this, just this small amount of cells are all transposed on over to here, so I can quickly check off everything as I go. And this is the checklist right here, and I will do this do it in order every time, each week, without fail. And when I do, everything is I can say with 100% confident is battle ready and ready to go. I would first mint everything. I would actually check everything's EVs, what they were currently, make sure their abilities are they're minted natured correctly, their abilities are correct, everything down the list, the EVs, and checking the stats to make sure I haven't made any errors when I EV. That's what this section is for. This one I would type in what their current EV spread is, and it compares up to what their EV spread is up here. And say I was to bring a not very offensive, I suppose this way, if I was EVing for my Landorus coming into next week, I go check on its EVs, and it showed that my last Landorus that I used was complete glass cannon. This shows me very clearly, to me at least, that it tells me what EVs I need to change around, and then I would change accordingly. So for this one, I see -40 there, so I would chuck it the 40. I would chuck it for, I believe it's Quolot berries to reduce its speed down to the 212 that it needs to be, and then I would give it the vitamins and feathers to bump its stats up to the stats that I need. And that's just how this section all works. It shows me as clear as it shows to me what I need to do in order to EV everything correctly. Then from there, I just go down the list. I make sure everything's ability is correct. I check everything's moves. And something that's important for moves is how different ones will learn each move. Either they'll have it as a level up, they'll have it as a TM, or I'll need to transfer it over. Thankfully, all the egg moves we've called them in the past, but now we can just transfer them around with Mirror Herb. Probably, honestly, one of my favorite quality of life changes in the new generation. But yeah, after that, I PP up what I need to PP up. Things that I would usually PP up are low PP moves or important recovery moves. Things like Sucker Punches only got 5 PP. I make sure I have it PP'd up to all of it. I believe things like Earthquake starts out at 10 PP, and look, I might be locked into clicking Earthquake more than 10 times, looking at the Choice Scarf. So I got to make sure that is up to 16, things like that. Positioning moves, this is actually an important step, mostly for doubles. I always make sure things like Protect is up at the top. I believe I actually made a tweet as to how I position my moves But yeah, in singles I make sure I've got dual stab, utility, status moves in that order, things like that. To me, positioning is important. Nextly, the held items. I will actually put held items as the very last thing I need to do, because as I've said with learning moves, you can use a mirror herb to transfer moves over, so I don't want to deal with using a held item before now, because I'll have to move a move item around if I'm using my mirror herb. And then, very important step, make sure you save the game, because I don't want to fire up my game and load up into the battle and be like, oh, I have not saved. So yes, extremely important step. Do not forget to save the game. Now, lastly, this is probably the most insane sheet of the entire thing. This is my note taking. I took notes on all of the gym leaders, every move they have, every item, their abilities, even down to their terror. I made sure I had every information I could glean before each of my weeks. I know one of these at least is not up to date, that's Attica. I made sure each of them was like up to date up to my week battling them. After that, look, I didn't really need to take notes on that leader anymore, I've already cleared them. So, from this point, I'm going to go over my battles with them. Let me quickly move this one back up here, because this is the best way for me to show how I went about it. Let me see if I can quickly change one of these over to these. I think that will do. Alright. Okay, it's not showing up as I would like. Oh, it's because I haven't shown it. Yep. There we go. Alright. So, look, this is very off the cuff, not 100% prepared. I don't have the script. But yes, I will be using this arrow to show each battle as I did them. So, this is my badge case. I would add a badge to it every time I claimed a win. And I did it in bottom down order, so I did this one, and this one, then this one, and this one, and this one. You get it at this point. So, first battle was versus Psyche. So, Psyche was my first battle. I had no information other than she is a single battles using flying and psychic types. I believe the most pivotal things was like at the very start, I led off with my Glamora, as I said. I clicked Endure into something. Oh, okay, it was 7 months ago. If I'm a bit spotty on some of the battles, I'm going to forget things. But look, I think the worst of it will actually be in the double battles, because those are some hella hectic battles. It's hard to keep track of everything and remember everything that went down in those, because so much happens in one turn. But yes, versus Psyche, I ended up challenging Psyche first up. I led off with my Glamora. It red carded her out into Minior. From there, the main takeaway for me is I could have just claimed a Minior right there with a power gem, but I was being a bit more on the safer side of things. In hindsight, I don't really know particularly, but yes, the big important turning points for me in that battle was my Volcarona versus Altaria. My Volcarona was max defense, max HP, and was able to tank a Dragon Dance boosted Brave Bird from Altaria, and then get the revenge off. And then shortly after, my Roaring Moon came on in, cleaned up a Cresselia, which I was not expecting that to get a good quick KO. Like, my Roaring Moon was burnt from the Driflin prior, but it did have a Dragon Dance up, it was attack booster, and with the attack booster and Dragon Dance underway, it was able to one-shot a Cresselia, and that was when I knew this Mon was the Mon. This is him. My Roaring Moon cleaning Cresselia up, and Cresselia is very well known for being a very tanky Mon. But yeah, after Roaring Moon cleaned up Cresselia, cleaned up Drifblim, it did drop afterwards, I believe, to Metagross Ice Punch after not scoring that KO. And my Golden Go came on in right on after, cleaned up the Metagross, faced down the Espathra. I was forced to Terra into my Terra Steel Golden Go then, mainly to avoid potential Espathra using Shadow Ball. I did not know its move pool at that point, but I knew it could carry Shadow Ball, and that was the only way I could see me losing at that point was from a Rogue crit Shadow Ball. Unfortunately, they did not carry the Shadow Ball, and my Golden Go cleaned up that battle, claiming me my first badge versus Psyche. Next up, Lobo. Alright, so Lobo, as he very adequately puts, I was probably one of his hardest losses. After his first week, he was like, when he first started up, his first week, he had the most challenges, and he took on and just wiped out a good majority. Like, I think after week 1, he had the best win rate out of the gyms. He had the most wins out of them all. So, for me, like, I think the funniest thing was me in DMs with Chufti organizing battles. He's asking me, alright, who do you want to challenge first up? I always answer back with, send me into whoever needs battles. Whoever is the least popular gym, send me into them. For me, I'm not really worried about who I verse. I know I'm confident that I can take them on in any order. The order does not matter to me, so whatever order's easiest. So, Lobo, after absolutely throwing hands, scaring off all the competition, had surprisingly a few amount of challenges into week 2. But, unfortunately for him, I was one of his challenges, and I absolutely cleaned him. My battle versus him, the entire game plan was all based around my Golden Go versus his Skarmory. So, his Skarmory, I couldn't really touch my Golden Go. It only, in my note-taking, I had it with Drill Peck, and I'm like, Lobo likes to set up hazards. His best primary hazard setup is his Skarmory. If he brings out his Skarmory, I'm going to bring in my Golden Go. Know that his Skarmory can't touch me. He knows his Skarmory can't touch me. So, he's going to switch the first time around. So, me on my cheeky side is like, alright, the whole game plan is he sends out Skarmory, I send out Golden Go to match his Skarmory, and then I'm clicking Focus Blast. And whatever comes in, I can just potentially just eliminate a threat right away. Eliminate either a Tita, eliminate a Heatran. In the battle, I eliminated an Excadrill straight up. It took a Focus Blast and just did not see the rest of that battle. Mind you, it's still Focus Blast. It could miss. If it did miss in that situation, like the Excadrill really couldn't touch my Landorus, which was the other very important, very pivotal Mon going into Lobo. So if the Focus Blast missed, the classic Focus miss, I would just switch in my Landorus and pivot around from there. And then, when that Skarmory inevitably comes back out again, the Golden Go comes back in, and this time, he knows to watch out for that Focus Blast. So I'm clicking Nasty Plot. And that's what happened. The Skarmory came back out after the Excadrill dropped from the first Focus Blast. I clicked Nasty Plot, and that's when things went from pretty bad to even worse for him. So after a nasty plot, in my notes I did see that his Skarmory was Keen Eye. After the battle I did have talks with, I believe either Lobo or Masto brought it up, that neither of them realized his Skarmory was still Keen Eye. I did. For me, I'm like, look, he either still has Keen Eye or he has Sturdy. Either way, Shadow Ball is still free here. Click Shadow Ball, got the one shot, did not change it over to Sturdy, and then look at me, I've got a +2 Golden Go, and it's going. Alright, so then right on after that, he sends out his Heatran, and this is another very important thing I checked a lot during a lot of my team preps, was I looked at a lot of the HP investments, because stats are not as easily to see, but HP investments you can see from their side, and I noticed that his Heatran had no HP investment. So to me that tells me it's either max speed timid or max speed modest. I did not know which, but that was another level onto my how I prepped my Golden Go for this battle. I EV'd my Golden Go to outspeed modest, but my Golden Go was tanky enough to live a timid Lava Plume from his Heatran. So and this is after taking Life Orb chip as well. So the turn went out. His Heatran was indeed faster, fired off a Lava Plume, dropped my Golden Go down to red health. And I was sitting there chilling, because I knew I could live that Lava Plume. And that Golden Go fired off a Shadow Ball, wiping out the Heatran. And then Life Orb finished off my Golden Go. After a very good job well done. My Golden Go cleaning up 3 kills in that one battle, 3 very important kills. And that gave way for my Landorus to finish off Lobo with an Earthquake sweep, breaking through his Goodra, which the first turn of the battle I had to check and make sure that Goodra was not carrying Ice Beam. Fortunately for me it didn't, otherwise my Lando was a bit less confident into that Goodra. But didn't see Ice Beam. So from that point, it just clicked Earthquake, claimed Goodra, claimed his T-Tar, and claimed his Golden Go. And that was Lobo done. Alright, next, we start into the these 4 battles. These were the 4 battles that were all doubles. The first 2 were singles, the last 2 gyms were singles, all the Elite 4 were singles. So in the middle were all 4 of my VGC battles. Well, I say VGC, all my double battles. So I think preamble going into these, as I said, double battles are really hard to keep track of and are vastly harder to prep for. It's a lot harder than like, oh, Lobo sends out Skarmory, well here's my perfect answer. For doubles, I don't have that. Because yes, Danko can send out his Salamence and I'm like, yeah, I've got my answers to that. But it just absolutely goes out the window when he sends it out next to a mouse hole, for instance. But yes, Danko being the normal and dragon and double battles, this was one of the harder battles for me to prep for. One of 4 times, I did do a quick count before this, 4 times I actually had to do mock battles just to prepare for them. Just bring up onto Pokemon Showdown and used the teams that I presumed that I had info on. And like, Danko was one of the harder gyms for me to prep for. Mostly because, as I said, his types are normal and dragons, and we've been through my roster. Normal types are weak to fighting types. I don't have any of those. Dragon types are weak to Fairy types, ice types. Yeah, I don't have any of those either. And yeah, sure, dragons are weak to dragons, and hell, I have 3 of those. Still really very difficult for me to... Probably one of the 2 that were the hardest gyms for me to really prep for. Simply because of just typings and doubles on top of it all. So during my mock battles, the one setup I really couldn't have a very clean answer out to was Mousehold Archalodons, but in my battles to him, he went for his Trick Room side of teams. That was Porygon to Ursaluna. Unfortunately for Danko, I am very familiar with Porygon 2. I respect that mon. That mon is my favorite mon. He is the #1 on my favorite mon list. And with good reason. That Porygon 2 of his actually gave me the most problems throughout. Like, it terroring into flying or gave perfect defensive utility into what I was firing into it at the time. The Ursaluna I had to really manage as well between Flame Orb, Chip, and everything. I had perfect outs for Braviary and Mousehold, which he led with. Like, I led off with the Glamora Roaring Moon, which probably became one of my favorite leads into majority of the double battles. Just those 2 together cleared so many things. Just one wall breaker next to the other. And while I'm doing it, they set up as well. Like, a lot of the times it was just a very offensively minded duo that just wrecked a lot of setups. But yeah, even through like breaking the Braviary, breaking the Mousehold, and going into the Trick Room setup, I couldn't deny the second setup of Trick Room. I had to rely on using Dondozo Tatsugiri. The Dondozo was able to do enough work, breaking through the P2 eventually, breaking through Raging Bolt. It was an AV Dondozo just for Raging Bolt, but it slowly succumbed to just taking 2 hits from Headlong Rushing Ursaluna, and it dropped as well. This was definitely one of my closer matchups, but as I have said, Phase 2, the Tatsugiri comes on in, cleans up the Raging Bolt. It was weakened from the Dondozo. It fired off its Dragon Pulse, cleaned up Raging Bolt. I'm pretty sure Galding Fire dropped to my Glamora. Look, again, it was quite a while. The Ursaluna also folded at the very end with, I don't think it was my Tatsugiri, but there was something else on my roster that cleaned up Ursaluna at the very end. Again, very close to the wire. I was down to 2 mons, he was down to 2 or down to 3, but after Dondozo, he ran out of his resources and I was just able to clinch out that victory. Very close game. Again, the hardest one for me to prep for, simply because of the nature of normal and dragon types, and I just did not have good mons going into those typings. Alright, next up we have Zero In on Alex and his Fairy and Psychic team. Also on the double battles, the big important thing for him was he was running Psy Spam, and it's, again, it is a very important, like, very popular archetype running into VGC, so I was very confident going into it, and I believe one of my most pivotal mons, let me switch on back over to this screen. My most important mon, I can keep the arrow there. This one, so this monkey you may have spied a bit earlier. This monkey I had to breed specifically for Zero In on Alex, because one of my favorite outs to Psy Spam is Min Speed Rillaboom. So Min Speed Rillaboom brings, Like, it has the same base speed as Indeedee's. So, turn 1, if I lead this into his Indeedee, into the general Indeedee lead, they both fight for terrain, and disrupting terrain was very important for my Rillaboom. And then, like, outside of that, having Grassy Glide into Flutter Mane just drops Flutter Mane super hard. Like, again, double battles are very hard to remember, and I'm sorry, Alex, but it's probably one of the harder battles for me to remember everything that went down. Size Spam, having to keep track and manage Trick Room. I believe I was able to deny Trick Room all up because, look, his 2 Trick Room setters are Cresselia and Indeedee, and they happen to be very weak to a very certain type that I have a couple of very strong Pokemon for. Outside of that, I'm very confident going into Size Spam. I've versed it time and time again going into VGC. Just, again, like, these 2 Mons and the Rilla in the back. I believe this was the biggest showing for support Volcarona, carrying its Struggle Bug, having phenomenal grass and phenomenal bug and fire typing going into Size Spam, and fairy types. Absolutely house of a Mon going into Zero In on Alex. The team was able to manage through, break through his squad, and like the other very scary Mon for his roster was his Primarina, but the Monkey was there. Gave it a good old bonk, and that was it for Zero In on Alex. Alright, back to this one on high. So yes, now onto the other one that really was really difficult to prep for. I reckon in a vacuum, this is the gym that was the hardest to prep for everyone, if they were prepping correctly. But yeah, Ramen with a tropical theme. Alolan Eggy being his ace. His team's the best way to describe him is he's in double battles. One of his team is based around the sun, the other team is based around rain, and just the combination of the typings, just he has a lot of versatility between the two. Like the sun being majority fire and grass, and then his rain team being majority water and electric. Like, it's so hard to bring in a specific Mon that is good into both of them. Like, this is where I'm very glad that I have a plethora of 3 dragons, and one of them, after not even showing once during the first 4 battles, showed up into Ramen and was extremely pivotal into Ramen, and that was my Dragonite. But before we go into that, I need to better explain why things were very hard to prep for him. Things like Rillaboom, for instance, very good grass type, very good to go into his rain side of teams. Because look, all of these water types don't want to take that wood hammer. And like on his rain side, he has a Alola Raichu Pincurchin setup. And Rillaboom disrupting that terrain is very important. However, if Ramen decides to bring his Sun team going into it, grass types resisting Rilla, fire types resisting Rilla, that's where my monkey kinda sweats, you know? Kinda has a very tricky time. But yeah, again, my game plan going into Ramen is very similar to Danko. I led Roaring Moon, Glamora, and just the combination of a very strong dragon with very good coverage, having Earthquake to cover the fire types going into the fire types in the sun side of the team, the electric types going into the rain side of things, Glamora covering very well is on top of it, able to pin all the grass types on the fire side, pretty much pin both the fire and the grass types in the sun side. On the rain side, a bit weaker, but with mons like Ludicolo, weak to the poison side, Pelipper, weak to the rock side, and his ace, again, weak to the poison side, Glamora can take a very quick early KO. Very offensive leads, but again, the most pivotal mon going into Ramen for me was my Dragonite. Like, grass, electric, water, fire. Dragon types resist all 4 of those types, and I brought all 3 of my dragons coming into it. I had my Dozo Tatsugiri. I don't believe my Dozogiri actually hit the field this time around, mainly because after the first setup lead, my Dragonite came on in. It was max HP Choice Band Dragonite, and I'm like, you know what? If I click Outrage, nothing on either side can safely take that. And that's how Dragonite went in, clicked Outrage, picked up 3 kills on his debut after taking his first weeks off. As I said, the Dragonite came on in, and it became extremely pivotal in the very niche cases into a very difficult gym to prep for. And I suppose a good thing to note is going into Ramen, he did bring his rain side of things. He did try to pivot around with the electric duo as well, but good Earthquake from my Roaring Moon cleaned them up. And after the Dragonite came on in, picked up a bunch of KOs with Outrage, Ramen was out of resources, and I claimed my 5th badge. And next, we have Attica. So, Attica, prepping for her 2 most dangerous mons were her Gouging Fire and Walking Wake. And they were really scary to prep for. Especially for, this is a match where Dozogiri really shows up. Attica being water and fire. And this is the funniest side where, like, water and fire between Scold from Vaporeon, Burning Bulwark from Gouging Fire. She has a Volcarona as well with Heat Wave and Flame Body. This is the odd time where, in prep, I picked out an ability I never thought I would ever even glance at, and that was Water Veil Dondozo. And I'm like, you know what? This just covers all of the potential times it could get burnt between all of the ones I just listed, and I even just missed the Hydro Steam from the Walking Wake on top of it all as well. However, on this week, Attica changed up her team and swapped out her Scovillain, her Walking Wake. Unfortunately, honestly, I was looking forward to taking on that Walking Wake with my Tatsugiri. And she swapped out her beloved Lucario for a Dondozo Tatsugiri of her own, and a Incineroar on top of it. However, as I have said pretty numerous times at this point, I am extremely confident with Dondozo. I'm one of Dondozo's strongest trainers for Australia. So, in turn, not only am I really strong at using Dondozo, I am really strong at versing them. And I have the perfect mon to out her Dondozo, and that was my Glamora. My Glamora, I believe I led exactly the same thing that I've led for the past few gyms, and that was Glamora Roaring Moon. Roaring Moon having a lot of good offensive pressure if she decides to lead the gouging or the walking. But the important thing was, actually no, I think I led the Brilla into her. Sorry, it was a few months ago, and double battles, as I said, very tricky to keep track of. But the important thing was leading that Glamora. And turn 1, I clicked Toxic into that Dondozo. Turn 2, I brought in my own Dozo Tatsugiri to take whatever her Dondozo could deal with my own. And look, hers was toxic poison, mine was not. Hers got whittled away. My Dondozo, at that point, was locked in. Cleared off her Dondozo. Cleared off a couple more mons before she finished up. She finished up the Dondozo herself. And at that point, she had ran out of resources and couldn't deal with Phase 2. The Tatsugiri coming on in, cleaning up a Gouging Fire. And help from a Glamora coming in late as well. Could have also cleared up Gouging Fire. The Roaring Moon came around as well to help with the Incineroar a bit. And last up, her Vaporeon got a huge bonk from the monkey. and afterwards, shot Attica some DMs, be like, yo, this is some pointers on how to use Dondozo. And yeah, that's how I finished up Attica and claimed my 6th badge. So, at the end of that, I have only single battles to go through. Second to last on the gym side, we have Aldemone. So, Aldemone has a Fairy and Grass team in singles. She's probably, unfortunately, I would say one of the weaker sides of the gyms, because Fairy and Grass are very weak defensively, especially into a certain Glamora of mine. But I did decide to go a bit easier on her as well. I decided not to bring my Volcarona, not to bring my Golden Go, because look, she had seen enough of those mons and she was pretty sick of seeing those mons coming into her every week. So I'm like, you know what? I don't need them. So I started cooking, and I enacted the plan of what I affectionately refer to as Hot Monkey Dick. And that was my Rillaboom, setting up a Swords Dance, and then Terrafire. And Owl, she claimed a lot of good victories. A big load of them was from a lot of Quick Claw proccing from her Gardevoir and her Fluttermane being very scary. But this is why I cooked up the plan of Hot Monkey Dick. Because I worked out with my Rillaboom after a Swords Dance boost with Grassy Glide and Terrain Extender. That was the most consistent way for me to clean Gardevoir and clean Fluttermane. They couldn't take a +2 Grassy Glide, and because of the priority, it eked around the Quick Claw procs and it worked around Fluttermane's base 135 speed. At the end of it, the Terrafire side of things was very important, going into mons like her Tinkaton, for instance, being very weak, where otherwise Tinkaton would have resisted the Grassy Glide. And then Mimikyu at the end of it. Her Mimikyu was her Terra of choice, and it Terra poisoned. So Grassy Glide could really only got you hit once, broke Mimikyu's disguise, and then the Terrafire finished it off before the Mimikyu can clear off the monkey. And that was Owl done. Very good battle from all of the gym leaders, and the last gym leader was Extra Liana. So, Extra Liana was, again, honestly, one of the harder gyms to prep for in a vacuum, because her theme is all the starters. And all the starters together, there is so much versatility in all of them. And it is very difficult to account for every possible one. You've got to deal with Incineroar coming in, dropping your stats with Intimidate being a bulky threat, dealing with Hisuian Samurott with its entry hazards, Superior being very fast, and you don't want that thing to get out of hand with Leaf Storm. You have to deal with Rillaboom of her own, with her own Grassy Glide, set up with Feraligatr and with Sheer Force, Skeledirge being a very defensively strong threat, Torterra with Shell Smash, you can't, again, another mon you can't let set up, Greninja. There is just so many mons that you have to account for every single thing. And, well, look, I did beat her, so I would say I did a very good job covering for as many bases as I could. The biggest problem I had into her was actually her Skeledirge. Mainly, the big thing that really worked me, was able to really push me around, was the Skeledirge going into Terra Fairy, so I couldn't really hit into it super effectively at that point. I don't believe I brought Glamora into her for fear of all of the water types, so that was kind of out of the window for Skeledirge. Again, the Terras just add another layer of things you have to prep for into each of them, and they can throw you very much a lot of the times through all of the battles. For the Skeledirge, I had came up with the very hilarious plan of Fly Lando T. So I look at the starters, and it's like, if I click Fly with Lando T, nothing really wants to switch in on it, because Grass types obviously would drop to the Flying. All the Water types are her best answers, but none of them really resists it, barring Empoleon. And then Empoleon, for instance, then drops to the Earthquake that I launch right after. And yeah, I just click Fly with my Lando T. It's the most off-the-wall tech you consider, but it was just one of the perfect answers that I had. And honestly, I may have had Fly on a few of my mons for the last few weeks, and that was when it had its best showing, was versus Extra Liana. Like, the combination of Lando clicking Fly, there was nothing that could safely switch into it and then not die to the direct follow-up straight after. And with Fly, between Fly and Substitute, the Skeledirge could not land a Will-O-Wisp onto my Landorus, as my Landorus slowly whittled it away and finished it off around a Slack Off. And that finished up my badges for the gyms, and then on to the Elite Four. So the main difference between each of the Elite Four and the gym badges is because at that point we are effectively front runners. We had no information into what the Elite Four had apart from their types and their ace. So going into the first of the Elite Four, we have Masto. So Masto and I, we go back way back, probably about more than 10 years at this point. So we know each other very well. We respect each other's, at least I hope he respects my ability to battle. But out of all the gym leaders, because he's the one that I know the most, he was probably the one I was most worried about versing. And on top of it all, he has 3 types for me to prep for. He has Dark types, he has Ghost types, and he has Poison types. So, again, you've seen my prep document, so that second page quickly filled up with all of the Dark, Ghosts, and Poison types I had to prep for. He was, again, one of the few trainers I had to do mock battles for just to get a good, consistent game plan going for. My game plan going into Masto, after a bunch of the mock battles, I worked out, like, I just slowly out-tempoed Masto. So I was always able to consistently stay at least 1.5 to 2 months ahead of him during all my mock battles. There was a couple of battles where there was like very concerning mons, mostly the ghost types being Annihilate was very scary for me to deal with. Houndstone during practice was very problematic for me as well. But thankfully he didn't decide to bring any of those two into me. However, like Darkrai and Xianpao were very scary mons for me to run into. I managed around them fine enough and was able to pivot around them perfectly. I believe the most important pivotal part of our match was at the very end. We're both very low on resources. I have my Lando and my King Gambit at the end. He has his Xianpao and a low health Samurott as well. I believe it was low health Samurott in the end. But the big important thing was a Sucker Punch play into my Lando. And it's like he decided not to, out of respect of something you have seen me do a good majority of my battles, and something that I definitely abused a lot during my Elite Fours was my inherent ability to just call Sucker Punches and just set up. I love setting up, as you probably have seen as I battle. I love clicking a setup move and sweeping from there. However, I decided not to go straight for the chip damage, drop the Xianpao down to half as it went for the Icicle Crash, cleared off my Lando, and then it's Xianpao versus my King Gambit. And at this point, I very clearly had a win condition. I either go for a Sucker Punch play, potentially having to play around a Sacred Sword from the Xianpao, or I believe my best plan was to go for just a straight, I believe I had my own fighting move, my own low kick. No, Iron Head from my King Gambit to clean up his Xianpao and finish off the battle. And at that point, if it's one thing that is very spotty on me, is Terra. I don't like to Terra unless I feel like I absolutely need to. And Terra is the very riskiest play for me like Xianpao into King Gambit. My Terra on my King Gambit is flying, so if that Xianpao went for its own Icicle Crash, well, King Gambit might not be living that turn. Actually, I believe I still had my Dondozo in the back there, but I believe it was status at that point? Yeah, I believe I had it rested, like it was full health, but asleep from rest. So, but yes, still very risky, and I don't think, like, this was probably one of the closest matches for my team. Just went down to a very huge mind game at the end, and like, again, me and Master, we know each other very well. We understand, like, he could go Sucker Punch, he could go Icicle Spear, he knows I have Terra Flying King Gambit, but for me, my best odds, I felt, was Terra Flying King Gambit, Iron Head, he went for the Sucker Punch, did not KO my King Gambit, Iron Head finished off the Xianpao, and won me my first Elite Four match. Huge, like, I cannot understate the amount of respect that both me and Masu have for each other. More than that battle shows that more than anything else. Alright, then we have me versus Ryaka. He has the Dragon and Fire types, and like, Fire is a very rough type going into me in particular, because I have access to Glamora. His dragon sides, I can match him with my own dragons. But he didn't just use dragons and fire types, he had a bunch of other mons, all based around the Monster Hunter theme. So for instance, something that I wasn't prepped for was Electivire, for instance, and that Electivire got a very clean Ice Punch KO onto my Landorus. but at the end of it, like, I believe a very pivotal part of the match was even just before that. My Dragonite came on in. It had a Dragon Dance set up, ready to sweep, facing down his very important dragons, being the Hydrapple. I had clocked in my Outrage, and my Dragonite was set to sweep the entirety of his team. However, unfortunately for me, his Hydrapple both had Terra Fairy countering my Outrage, but also was able to click Fickle Beam, and it went all out with his Fickle Beam, which is also another bout of unluckiness. And if it wasn't for going all out on Fickle Beam, my Dragonite would have been able to live otherwise due to multi-scale at that point. But all out, one shot of my Dragonite. It was able to take the Outrage coming in, and at that point, that was me on the back foot. But I still had resources in the back, even after losing my Lando to his Electivire. A lot of it came down to my Assault Vested Glamora breaking down his Raging Bolt down to low enough for the rest of my team to slowly finish up, clean up, and that was Riaka and me, and I believe that was the one of the highlight battles of the week. Either that or my Jack Newey battle. But we'll talk about the Jack Newey battle in a bit. I believe after the Glamora weakened the Raging Bolt, my own Raging Bolt, Roaring Fire came on in, cleaned up at the end. Alright, so we have Jack Newey. Alright, Jack Newey is rocking the electric and water typing, with his ace being Lapras. Staying true to it, he had his own Raging Bolt as well. I believe I brought in a Assault Vest Monkey into this. A big pivotal moment was my Roaring Moon once again, able to set up a good Dragon Dance, whittled away a bunch of his mons to red health. The big important one was, I didn't bring Assault Vest Monkey. I had the plan of Scarf Monkey, because electric types and water types are very well known for having a lot of very fast Pokemon, and having a Scarf Rillaboom going into that matchup was very, it's one of those off-the-wall sorts of things you don't necessarily expect straight away. But like after a Scarf, it's able to outspeed a potential Greninja, able to outspeed many of the plethora of electric types that are fast. And that was very important, but not quite as important as my turn 1 play, which was setting up rocks with my Landorus. Yes, I brought Landorus into water types, and I was happy. Its entire plan was, it's a offensive sash lead to set up rocks later on, maybe potentially set up some earthquakes onto electric types if it was allowed to live past turn 1. And that's exactly what it did. It set up rocks, switched on over to my Rillaboom. My Rillaboom cleaned up a bunch of kills, got things down to low to red. The very big important one was his Regieleki. Dropped it down to red after a Wood Hammer, pivoted around a bit after that. So when his Raging Bolt had to come, not his Raging Bolt, his Regieleki came on in, it dropped to rocks. It was down to Lapras and Roaring Moon. The Lapras was able to take a knockoff, a bit of a misplay on my end, I'll be honest. I could have probably claimed the KO with Outrage, but I figured knockoff was enough. It was not. I got punished for it, lost my Roaring Moon from that. cleaned up with the monkey straight afterwards. Very, very versatile mon going into that team. Dropping, like finishing off the Lapras with a bonk. The Regieleki coming in, dropping to the Stealth Rocks right after. And I believe there was one mon left. And that got finished up as well. Very close games. Actually, I believe it was the Raging Bolt of his. And just absolute another very close match, but I just kept one step ahead and kept up my tempo and won out against Jack Newey. Now, last of all, this was the match, like out of all the matches, this was the one match I was the most nervous going into, because look, it was the last match for all of the Elite Four. If I win it here, I've won the league. I believe Luke F, who was the only other person in contention, just lost out to Jack Newey after not being able to deal with his Raging Bolt as well. So for me, this was do or die. This was the most high stressful battle for me. I was very nervous going into it, so I had to play everything as perfectly as I could. So very high pressure for me, but this is where, for me, I know me very well. When I am under pressure, when I am nervous, that is when I work my best. That is when I am at my strongest, when I am at my weakest. And not only that, Luch here, his typings being the fighting and steel typings, and Quaquaval coming in, these are very good typings for me. Like, fighting and steel are very physically offensive with very few special attackers, as you saw in my prep document last, was his typings. That means I had a max physically defensive Dondozo locked in. Landorus locked in. Landorus absolutely putting in a lot of work into that battle. And just like doing lock battles against Luch, like what I expect, like very problematic mons, I was just able to out-tempo out his Annihilate. I did mock battle against that. His Annihilate was very, very difficult to really prep hard for. And my matchup into Luch, I brought two mons, that being the Volcarona and the Rillaboom, with very, not very standard sets, so kind of maybe eking into a bit of the nerves a bit there as well, because I wasn't 100% confident in their performance. But if you watch that battle, they were the absolute perfect sets to run into Luch with. The Rillaboom being Grassy Seed, Sword Stance, Drain Punch, really threw Luch a huge spanner into it. Volcarona was extremely pivotal going into Luch as well, having extremely good coverage between its Heat Wave for the Steel types and Hurricane for the Fighting types. It was my best out going into mons like King Gambit and Annihilate. And for me, the early game going into Luch was very important. He led a Skarmory, and I knew that moment I need to stop Stealth Rocks from going up the entire first half of that battle. I had brought the perfect tech of Taunt on my Landorus, and taunted the Skarmory, denied the Stealth Rock, brought in my Rillaboom after he switched around, and the Rillaboom came in and locked in. Got its defense boost from Grassy Seed, got in a attack boost from Sword Stance, started Drain Punching, knocking out the Skarmory, knocking out various mons. He actually made a slight misplay with, well, I suppose misplay, but he respected my potential to Terrafire my Rillaboom. So that helped me in the long run because that meant he didn't set up Stealth Rock for my Volcarona to put in a lot of work going into the second half of that battle. After my Volcarona did drop, it was Annihilate versus Roaring Moon, and Roaring Moon locked in Acrobatics, and I knew that was where I needed to pick up the pace because I had to do a lot of pivoting around the Quaqua Ball with my Dondozo. The timer was running down. I clicked in my Roaring Moon, got the attack from the energy booster, clicked in Acrobatics, cleaned up the monkey, cleaned up another mon out on the way through. That was the Scrafty? No, the Scrafty got cleaned up by my Volcarona. But yes, Roaring Moon then dropped to King Gambit. His King Gambit was able to get the one shot with the Sucker Punch. But at that point, Leech was down to his Quaquaval and King Gambit. After his King Gambit took an Earthquake, they were both very low health. But that was when timer ticked on over, and it was the only time my battles went to timer. But at that point, I still had a very healthy Landorus in the back. I still had a full health Golden Go in the back. Golden Go only coming to 3 matches and not even hitting the field on his third. But with those two in the back and my Dondozo being max physically defensive into 2 physical attackers and a Rocky helmet on his head, the battle was declared in my favor and Leech was defeated. But then, after I claimed the victory of the league, clearing out all the Elite Four, one announcement was made, and that was me versus Chufti for the Battle of the Champions. I'm gonna go back over to this one. Go on over to Chufti. So the only thing that I knew about going into Chufti was his ace being his Latios. So I had to prep the most consistent team that I could. The Lando, the Roaring Moon, and the King Gambit was locked in because I felt they were my best outs going into a potential Latios Draco Meteor dropping into me. And, well, the battle, you'll have to watch the battle yourselves, but to me, the 2 most pivotal moments for me was having to play around potential Sticky Web Rabombi, denying it as much as I could with Lando setting up his Stealth Rock, making sure I didn't have to worry about potential sashes, and then pivoting around the Rillaboom into his Rotom Wash. Rabombi came on in, and when the Rabombi versus Rillaboom was there, I'm like, this is where I need to lock in my Roaring Moon, because if Sticky Web goes up, Roaring Moon's going to get hit by the Sticky Webs and won't be able to outspeed the Latios in the endgame. So the Roaring Moon came in, saw Quiver Dance from the Rabombi, cleaned the Rabombi. Again, this was me locked in. I could take a Moon Blast down to half health. Something that was very important into that game was the Grassy Surge, healing up my Roaring Moon, keeping it healthy for the rest of that battle, enabling it to take hits. It cleaned up Rabombi with an attack booster, boost energy, acrobatics. Chufti went into the Samurott, clicked Sucker Punch, but for me, I had seen Hisuian Samurott from Extra Liana. I had seen the Hisuian Samurott from Master. I had prepped for a Samurott going into Jack. And I was confident every time that my Roaring Moon could take hit. Honestly, it actually could not take a hit in hindsight. But after seeing Sucker Punch, I clicked, like on that turn, I had clicked Dragonets. Sucker Punch failed. And then it goes down to Sucker Punch calls. And for me, I love seeing, like, for me, I am very battle experienced. I see Sucker Punch once. The second Sucker Punch you could say is a 50-50, but they know I've got a Dragon Dance set up. I am good to sweep. They want to be proactive with their Sucker Punches. They need to get rid of my threat. So to me, in my mind, their mind is like they need to click Sucker Punch again to stop this big threat, be proactive with their Sucker Punch. However, I am a greedy kind of guy. Me at my scariest is when I will click my setup moves a second time, push an advantage that I had. So I had set up a second Dragon Dance into a Sucker Punch. So in my mind, this is where, like, alright, Sucker Punch is still a 50-50 whether they click Sucker Punch or not. However, to me, I'm like, alright, they've learnt their lesson. They're not going to Sucker Punch me in again because they're scared of a third Dragon Dance. So I locked in Acrobatics. And that is where I'm going to leave that battle for you. Did Chufti Sucker Punch a third time, which honestly in my opinion is actually the optimal play, but that goes into Sucker Punch logistics, and look, I've played around so many Sucker Punches. But yes, I lock in my Acrobatics on that third potential Sucker Punch. And again, that is where I'm going to leave you. You're going to have to watch that battle to see how the rest of that battle went. And with that, I'm going to leave you with that. That is my journey of the Chufti League. Final statements from me. Look, this league was very return to form for me. I haven't done draft leagues in a long time. I haven't played single battles in a long time. So it was really just a return to form for me. I grew huge appreciation for Roaring Moon. Going into it, Glamora would have been my favorite mon. Swap back over to this screen. Like, I will chalk Roaring Moon as my absolute MVP throughout the entire league. Got brought into every single battle, had the highest kills by the end of it. I believe I have found my new favorite Gen 10 mon. But outside of my appreciation for the mons, I do need to give a huge thank you to Chufti, to each and every single one of the gym leaders, each and every single one of the Elite Four members, and a huge thank you to all the moderators. That'll be Clippy, that'll be Steggies. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be missing someone. Simi. Huge thank you for everyone working behind the scenes, because it was a huge 7-month endeavor for everyone. Everyone had to be locked in with a good schedule. There were definitely bumps and roads along the way, but everyone put in a huge work to put on a wonderful show for everyone. And a huge challenge for all of us challengers. There was so many battles for me that went down to the wire, and I had to really put in all the stops to claim my victories at the very end. As much as I enjoy battling, I believe the most important thing for me throughout the entire league were a lot of the friends I made along the way. Like, for me, got, like, huge friends with Chufti now, big friends with Logo, big friends with Ramen. Those are probably the big three for me. Love those guys to bits. And I am looking forward to fostering those friendships in the future. And with that, that'll be Scalvin out. I've claimed the title of champion. I am absolutely beaming from my performance, beaming from these hard-earned victories from me. This league has really made my year. And with that, I will bid you all adieu. Have a great, I guess, Christmas period coming up for everyone. And I'm at loss for words. Thank you, everyone. If you made it this far, it's an absolute long video, and hour and a half, and I ain't planning on editing this. Thank you again, and goodbye.